Welcome to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. Yo, Russell Brand, you say you want a revolution. Well, we all want to change the world. You say you've got no solution. Well, there's already a plan that takes money and power from those who hate and gives it to those who will no longer wait for you to cogitate, agitate, and debate whether or not wristbands and hashtags, oh so quaint, can stop the plunder and pillage by the con man, hucksters, and banksters backed by the state. It's called Bitcoin, mate. There's your revolution. Stacey?
Yes, Max. It's revolution time, and this is what's happening in the UK. Tweet from Bitcoin's Berlin. The value of Bitcoin will skyrocket once people understand just how revolutionary it is. That quote comes from Rick Falkvinge. And of course, that grabs the attention of many Western viewers because they're interested in speculation and prices rising for certain things, certain assets. But he's talking about the revolutionary idea of it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because Russell Brand is a very popular entertainer here in the United Kingdom, was on a very popular TV show, news show, and was talking about the need for a revolution, but he had no way to implement that revolution. He had no ideas other than to say that people are upset and need a revolution, which I think is pretty well understood. What he failed to mention is that Bitcoin is really that revolution. It started in 2009, and it contains within the Bitcoin protocol the seed of the revolution. I call it the currency of the resistance. It allows people, for example, in Greece or other countries, to create their own economy in ways that they want their economy to work for them, outside of a centrally controlled, centrally planned economy like you have in Britain or you have in the United States, controlled by kleptocrats. It completely avoids all of that. So I would hope that somebody like Russell Brand or somebody like this who has the eye of the media to step into the Bitcoin arena, which I think this will happen shortly, and then you'll see Bitcoin trading at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Rick Falkvinge does an excellent analysis. He predicts that Bitcoin will capture between 1 and 10% of the global Forex market, which implies a price of between $100,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin.
Speaking of the price rising, this is in the next headline here from a hedge funder. Fortress's Novogratz says Bitcoin will be, quote, worth a lot. And this is Michael Novogratz. He's the chief investment officer for Fortress Investment Group, which is a $55 billion hedge fund. And he says, put a little money in Bitcoin, come back in a few years, and it's going to be worth a lot.
Right. Well, we became aware of Bitcoin when it was about $1 a Bitcoin. We recommended it to viewers of Kaiser Report when it was $5 a Bitcoin. It's now trading close to $200 a Bitcoin. It's been the best performing asset in the world, bar none. But this Fortress gentleman mentions he's a hedge fund and a private equity fund manager, and he understands that Bitcoin is now an asset class. Stocks, bonds, gold, silver, real estate, Bitcoin. It is an asset class. So every single one of those 10,000 hedge funds in the world who control trillions of dollars will need exposure to Bitcoin if they want to remain competitive. That's the bottom line. So these hedge funds will start nibbling into Bitcoin, and of course Barry Silbert's second market in New York has the Bitcoin Investment Trust, or BIT, that makes it easier for them to buy into Bitcoin. They will start outperforming their peers, and then their peers will have to get into Bitcoin as an asset class, and that's when you'll see the move into 5 and 6 digits.
Now, Novogratz says the reason why he sees it becoming worth so much is because of it growing as a payment system, displacing credit cards and PayPal and the likes of this, especially in the developing world, he says. So this is what we see in this next headline, Bitcoin Currency 2.0, and this is from Deloitte. And they mention the fact that it is growing widely across Kenya. For example, it's being integrated with the M-Pesa system, which is already a system of paying for goods and services with a mobile phone. So Bitcoin is being integrated into that system. In China, you have Baidu accepting Bitcoin. So they already have a mentality not part of this sort of feudal system where only the lords of banking can tell you what you're allowed to spend and how much interest and blah, blah, blah you're allowed to spend. But so they look at what happens when it gets adopted here in the West, Bitcoin. If Bitcoin were to achieve the mainstream adoption some believe it is capable of, the implications to retail banking would be seismic, with declining demand for traditional banking services like cash storage, payment, balance checks, international transfers, and foreign exchange, to name a few.
Right, well, there's one empire in the world, the American empire. It's backed by the US dollar, and the US dollar is 60% of all global transactions, and commodities like oil are traded in dollars and other commodities. And this dollar is backed by the U.S. military. And in places like Africa, where they're trying to control the oil, which controls the U.S. dollar and funds the U.S. military, there's an enormous warfare going on, sponsored by American operatives like the CIA and these other folks, to keep the petrodollar alive and well. So Africa naturally wants to be decolonized from the American empire and the other of these states, China as well, by adopting Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is really the currency of the resistance and the revolution. This is what I think Russell Brand has failed to see, or all other celebrity pundits have failed to see, the revolutionary aspect of Bitcoin. So it's great for Africa. People in China who are worried about the dollar being debased by all the quantitative easing happening in the U.S. are flocking into Bitcoin. We see the same thing in India. We see the same thing in Venezuela. We see the same thing in Cyprus, famously, when their currency collapsed and they poured into Bitcoin and the price skyrocketed.
Well, I think in Africa and China, it's not so much revolutionary, it's just independence. These people don't have the feudal lords of banking there. They're not in a system where, like this, here's growth fears as credit cards drive recovery. So we know the GDP numbers here are up. Everybody's saying recovery is here. Well, business lending is down 4%. You know what is up? By 30%, personal loans. What are the personal loans? On credit cards. So here we have a system where you're being charged 20, 30% for credit card loans on 0% money that the government gives to the banks, the central banks give to the too big to fail banks, the 6 banks that control everything here, just like the 6 energy companies that control everything. With Bitcoin, they're saying you could live outside of the banking system, because Kenya and China, many of these people already live outside of the banking system, and they're proving that they can have their own GDP growth, their own economies, without any of the JP Morgans or Goldman Sachs there in the first place.
Right, well, the pound is a housing stock pound, just like the dollar is a petrodollar. The pound's driven by housing and housing speculation. 80% of the economy, if you take the financial sector and the housing sector and all the sectors that support the housing and finance sector, 80% of the UK economy is based on house price speculation. Only 13% is actually small to medium enterprises. So people in the UK who want to escape the colonization by bank and real estate developers, and they want to avoid a repeat of the 2008 crash, which is baked into the cake. There will be a spectacular real estate crash. It's in the pipeline here in the UK. It'll happen within 18 months. They would want to adapt Bitcoin into their day-to-day life immediately as a way to preserve purchasing power and to get out from the colonization from real estate speculation and city speculators.
So you're saying that it's the assignat, basically the modern-day assignat, which was the currency during the French Revolution, which of course was backed by the real estate of the church, and that went the same way that perhaps the revolutionary currency and times of the UK.
Well, remember, during the French Revolution, the assignat, which was the currency of the time, backed by real estate. Similarly, you see hedge funds confiscating real estate through mortgage fraud in places like the United States, and then trying to convince people that the dollar is now backed by hedge funds speculating in real estate. So it's become the assignat of our day. That famously crashed, and then France went into a deep, dark, frozen period of no growth whatsoever, which is awaiting all except for those who are fortunate enough to have positions in Bitcoin and gold and silver.
But now going back to Bitcoin, of course, CNBC and many financial tweeters on Twitter, you know, they only tweet about it when the price is either crashing or going up fast. That's all they care about, is what the value, the price, the exchange rate to the US dollar is. Now, he's saying, and Deloitte, they're saying, while the currency itself, the future is not completely certain, they say, for now, though, it's not the price of Bitcoin we should be watching, but the real case studies of economic value emerging for those who choose to try it. It's a money game after all, and regulatory hurdles aside, the survival of Bitcoin will ultimately be determined by the true economic value it offers. So people choose to use it. It's not forced. The state doesn't back it. The state doesn't come to you and tell you, pay your taxes in this, transact in this, use this. You get to use it if you want. There's a giant flourishing economy in Kenya and China emerging around this. you could use it or not. And this is what they're saying is the economic value behind it.
Well, the trend is higher. And when you talk about the price and price movements, people always make the same mistakes. They tend to sell low and they tend to buy high. And of course, you need to discipline yourself to do the exact opposite. Buy low, and then if you're going to sell high. But when the price goes down, people get all fearful. They say, oh my God, it's going to go lower, so they don't buy. And then when prices go higher, they get all fearful that, oh my God, the price is too high. I can't possibly buy now. The price is too high. Most of the people who are on the sidelines not buying Bitcoin today will start to buy Bitcoin when it gets over 1,000. And then a greater percentage of people will definitely plow into Bitcoin when it starts to get over 10,000. Because then the greed factor will kick in and people will realize that, oh my God, I'm missing the boat. And most of the economy around me is crumbling. Only Bitcoin is going to survive. Max and Stacy were correct. Rick Fogvinia was correct. BitPay, Tony Gallippi was correct in recommending Bitcoin, and now they'll come into it at some stage. But they have yet to come in. They will, though, because it'll be the only game in town.
Now, many people calling for revolution also go around carrying photos of Chairman Bernanke. They believe in this system of a central bank system. The authorities tell you where you're allowed to transact. Well, here we have this system where those sort of people said, let's move our money. That will help us. That's our revolution when the financial crisis first happened. Let's move our money here in the UK. Like 7 million people are customers of the Co-op Bank, the ethical bank. Well, here's the headline for you, Max. Bondholders poised to seize control of Cooperative Bank. Cooperative Group admits plans to rescue banking arm will be material different to original proposals, with bondholders, including 2 hedge funds, poised to take control of the lender. Those are 2 U.S. hedge funds, Aurelius and Silverpoint. They control 70% of the bank. 30% is in hands of the ethical part. So there you have it. That's what happens with the Ben Bernanke system.
As we said on this show many times, the Move Your Money campaigns, whether it was in the United States or France, are foolish because there is no bank immune from what we've just seen with the Co-op Bank. The hedge funds simply came in and stole all the money. There's only one refuge. Well, there's 3 refuge. There's gold, silver, and Bitcoin. That's it. If you're looking to decapitalize the banks and preserve your sovereignty, your personal economic sovereignty, you have those 3 choices. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, full stop. Stacey Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Kaiser Report.
Thank you, Max.